So, yeah, I've one of the community mesh network I was part of was called Réseau Citoyen in Brussels, which taught me a lot about community networks, and that was back in 2001, I think. And so lately I got interested in Cuba for two reasons. Like 6 months ago with my wife, we decided to go there on a trip. And at the same time, I bumped on an article about community networks in Cuba. And so I just came back 2 weeks ago from the trip, and while we were going for vacation and visiting whatever, I wanted to use that as an angle also to get some more information, get some more information about networking there and how it would work. And so this is the result of prior research, on-site research, and ongoing conversation which I have with a few Cubans now. So a little bit of history. Cuba in 1959 had a revolution which ended up in turning it into a communist country, run by Fidel Castro here, picture, and now it's his brother Raul Castro running the country. But which means because it's a community, it's a communist country, everything is decided at the state level, right? So communications and a lot of commerce and everything is run by the state, and that's how they decide things to make it simple. So the communication company in Cuba is called ETEXA, or Telecomunicaciones de Cuba, and they're the ones who are providing now internet to the country, which is a fairly recent thing. So for two reasons. Apparently, I would say end of the 80s or beginning of the 90s, university researchers in Cuba were interested in participating in the nascent internet, and apparently they were quite active and quite present in the community. But two things happened. Or one thing happened is that in 91 or beginning of the 90s, the Soviet Union collapsed. And Cuba was relying a lot on the help and interaction they had with the Soviet Union. And so the island and the country went into a crisis from there. And then so also for those reasons, like investment in internet and so on, I guess didn't happen. But right now, the Cuban state is progressively getting the country connected in their own way. And this is what this graph is explaining. They're not running internet to telephones, and people cannot really buy internet and connect from their home. Instead, the government is putting Wi-Fi access points in different areas of the country. And right now, this is a graph from 2016. There's close to 400 Wi-Fi access points where people can go in the street and connect to the internet with their equipment. This is for a population of 10 million of people. So imagine 400 public access points and around 600 internet cafes or somehow. So that's the situation of internet access in Cuba, which basically only 5% of the population can access to. If you live in a rural area, you're not going to have a Wi-Fi access point in your town or your village. There is a Havana there, where there's 61 access points, and then the other regions of the country. So that's a graph. This is the service that they're using, or mostly using, the most popular services. I guess most of them I know. I didn't know this one. This is so basically what you see is that public parks, where people are sitting there with their phones or their laptop, connecting to the public internet, I would say. It's mostly provided by the equipment by Chinese company Huawei, which is the largest telecom hardware provider from China. And the financial minister of Cuba has said that they're interested in getting Cuba connected to the internet, but they don't want the bad things from the internet. And so you see the relation here with Chinese internet and how that can play for Cubans, I guess. So basically, when you want to connect, you turn on your Wi-Fi, this is what you see. This is in the middle of the city. You only see basically there's this real access point. I didn't figure out what it was, but you have an open wireless access, and then a closed one. You use the open one, and then basically you see people sitting all day long or next to those access points around Cuba. You spot those access points quite fast because you see a group of people just sitting there looking at their phones, and that's a sign of it. It's especially crowded at night. It's a mess to connect. I mean, during the day it's kind of okay when there's not too many people, but in the evening there's like so many people in these parks that it's basically connection doesn't work. So I tested. I was on vacation. I didn't plan to connect, but just for the sake of testing, I connected to the network. I tried different websites where they're blocking, for example, news from America, like New York Times or CNN or whatever. That wasn't blocked, but other websites were kind of blocked, so it's heavily controlled on what type of information you can access. This is another pictures of people sitting down and looking at their phones. But interestingly, you could connect to the Tor website, and I had Tor on my phone, and I could run Tor, so I could, through that, access if the connection was okay, certain websites not normally accessible, I would say, to Cubans. So this is a scene that you might see. This is during the day. Yeah, people with laptops in the streets and connecting. Those are the terms and conditions that were here in English that you need to sign to connect to the network. I thought it was interesting that they were like actually not long terms and conditions. I think the point 6 is interesting. It's user will use the provided services in accordance with the ethical and moral principles regulated in the current legislation without prejudice to public security, integrity, economy, and national independence. Basically what it says is you can't, like criticize the government, you can't use it for unlawful things regarding to legislations in Cuba. And that's, yeah, I guess that's why, you can't access certain websites and so on. Another thing that is kind of like weird is like, it's mostly used during the day by tourists, and in the evening mostly by Cubans. And so tourists like find shade and internet access. So you need to buy your access. So you go to an official shop of Etexa, and then you buy a card. And then that card gives you a login and a password. The password, like if you're not careful, you might scratch it off, by the way. And the price is 2 cooks for 1 hour internet. So 2 cooks is like $2, it's the same thing. You must know that the average salary of a Cuban is $20, $25 a month. So this is 1/10 of their monthly salary. So that's why also like the internet connection is not widespread. I know from a Cuban that has business running inside Cuba and related to internet, that if you want to have internet access for your business or for your home, it costs him $800 a month for a 1.5 megabits ADSL connection. That's the price that they're going through. So that's the sad situation, I would say, of getting access in Cuba. But Cubans are extremely full of resources, and even if the country has been under communist and embargo and a lot of not access to all the resources we have access here for the past 60 years, they're super creative and they're super energetic about getting their stuff done. And so this is what is really happening, and this is the part I was really also interested in, is there's something called street networks. And basically, they get access to Wi-Fi equipment, and they're building not a mesh network, but they're building a network across the city or across the areas where they live to connect with each other. Those networks are not connected to the internet, but it allows them to connect with each other and play online gaming or LAN gaming, I don't know how to phrase this, or to access to, for example, static copies of Wikipedia and other websites that some people who have access to good connections provide for the others. And that's what I was interested in. I wanted to know what was how those networks were working, who were the people running it, how they were, and yeah, what size they had, how they were managed, what type of protocol they were using, how they were distributing IPs, and so on. And I had a lot of contacts. I had a lot of people, phone numbers, thanks to contacts here that I had in New York, but I could, so far, never managed to get real proper answer. But so I was there, and I started like looking for it. There is this article that was published about 3 weeks ago in Wired that explains a lot of these things. And they had this map in the Wired magazine where they say that basically you have Havana, and this is the extent of the street network that is around Havana. So it goes all across the island. You saw that on the map. But basically, I visited other cities in Havana, and I could see that in all of them that I visited, there was street networks. Because what I could see is that here is, for example, there is a Ethernet cable running from the rooftop of a house to another one. And that, I mean, as my eyes were getting trained to see that in the cities, I could see those cables running from one rooftop to another, and it's barely attached. And that's how the network is built, mostly. Or they're having this on the rooftops, which is basically a wooden pole with basically 2 ubiquities protected from the rain or whatever. I'm guessing this is basically put like this because I know from Louis, who's a member of NYC Mesh, or he was at least here a few times, that some people smuggle ubiquities in their luggage when they go to Cuba, and to easily smuggle it, they dismount them, right? And they remove the casing, they just bring the electronics. So maybe that's a way to basically protect the electronics again from and this is basically when I was staying in Airbnbs and whatever. I would usually like go to the rooftop where I was, and I would look around, and this is what I could see, for example. Like really, this was in Trinidad. There were forests of ubiquities. Being there. The funny thing is that there might be 2 uses for it. One use could be that they're just trying to get the connection that that lives, for example, the official connection provided by the government that is in a public park 2 blocks away. So they use a ubiquity just to be able to navigate to access internet from home. Or they do it also, I guess, to do the street networks, because some of the access points are using video game names. So I'm guessing that's kind of like the reason why they you know, the excuse to build a network, right? It's just about video games. So that's another picture of like, and it's funny because it took me a couple of days to see those things. You know, I mean, it's also a different country. I've never been there, so there's a lot of stuff visually that gets to you. But then once I started seeing the antennas, I could see them everywhere, especially in richer areas of the cities, of course. There's a website, you can browse it from here, of course. It's called Revolico, which is the equivalent of Craigslist, but for Cubans. They have a static copy of Revolico that is every day being clones on their street nets. And that's how, if you check this is a screenshot of the part that sells modem and Wi-Fi equipment, you'll see that there's like countless of, how do you call that? Propositions, you know, to like buy or exchange Wi-Fi equipment. You must know that this is one of the great things about Cuba. It's the contradictions, right? This is a communist state country, so everything is regulated. Like you're not supposed to start a shop, or you're not supposed to like sell things out of the control of the state. But this exists like in a parallel world kind of thing, where ubiquities are sold at 200 cooks, for example, $200 for a ubiquity, while we can access here the same equipment for $50. And the funny thing about Ubiquiti is an American company. So this is clearly stated on their website, is that no Ubiquiti products can be transferred without license to any country. And in one of those countries is Cuba. So that for me is one of still like the questions that I have back from this trip, is that I've never seen so many Ubiquitis per square meter, right? And they're not supposed to get them for two reasons. One is the United States not allowing the company to sell them over there, and second is the state is highly regulating what type of telecommunication equipment can enter the country. So this is, I mean, for me, still an act of research, and yeah, that's for me is like the best image of, I mean, or one of the image of Cuba is that I think they're into open source, they're into creative use of tech, they're incredibly like smart at doing a lot with a little that they can have access to. And one of my goals of going there was to try to connect with Cubans that are involved in this field and to make a bridge with what NYC Mesh or other mesh networks across the world would do. And it's happening slowly. It's hard to get them to talk. We planned with Brian that there's 2 Cubans here in New York that are really involved in these things, and I wanted to get them here, or at least one, to get them here to talk with me, or at least be presenting it. But they're not too comfortable with that for multiple reasons. But yeah, I'm still researching this. I'm still interviewing them and trying to get as much information as possible from them. And so if you have any contacts or if you want to share any information, please contact me or want more info about this. I can point you to the articles I was referencing. At the same time, also, I want to talk about something. There's something called CubaConf, which is an open source conference happening in Havana in November, I think. And I would definitely encourage you, if you have the chances, to go there. There's 2 things that I don't want happening somehow, is that I don't want them to get Chinese internet, but I don't want them to get American internet either. I think they're smart enough to get their own internet and to build it from scratch, as they've proven they're doing it. I want to support that. So that's it. Thank you.
So those forests of routers, what are they? They're not talking to each other. Where are they?
I think some are and some are not. It was hard to get the information there because either the people I was talking to were denying that this was happening, or they didn't have the knowledge and it was the neighbor who had the knowledge. And the neighbor was not there. So it's somewhere, like in Havana, for example, the reaction was more like, oh no, it's not us, we don't know what's happening, it's the neighbor.
Because it's illegal? Or...
Yeah, it's not, I mean, yeah, it's illegal. The legality of it is complicated, and they're maintaining it, or it is still tolerated because they're very careful what they're doing with those networks. So they're not going to start opening forums to criticize the political system or whatever. They're self-regulating because they want to keep it, and they know that if they start fooling around with it, they might be shut down quite quickly, which apparently has happened a few times. So some, I think, try to just repeat the public access, while some other are really connecting. And maybe some are doing both. It's hard to know.
There's also a lot of piracy. A lot of American movies and stuff are passed around Cuba.
Yeah, that's something
they tolerate a lot of that.
I haven't talked about that. That's a whole field of, is that there, but that was less about like mesh networking or networking from an infrastructure point of view. But they have what they call El Paquete, which is basically every Monday, there's 1 terabyte of data from the internet that is being shared among USB keys and through a network of copying stations. And so yeah, it was true, like Monday night, I could hear in the Airbnb where I was, I could hear Hollywood movies being played, like, you know, like Universal or whatever. And they get access apparently to like all the latest series that we're watching, Game of Thrones or whatever. And all that is going through a network of. So yeah, they're not disconnected, but it's really yeah, interesting what's happening. Thanks. I hope I wasn't too long.
Thank you.
Thank you.